All right. Good evening, everybody. And hello to those of you who end up watching this later on. Thanks for joining us. We may have another person or two join. We've had a little bit of nasty weather today, so I know that does cause a lot of impacts. Stephen Hall, current president of the Capital Chapter SGMP. Go ahead and let everyone introduce themselves. We'll start with Gabrielle.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle. I am a meeting planner and looks like I will be the next president of SGMP, Florida Capital Chapter.
James Moran, former president, SGMP, and meeting planner.
Zandra Gilley with the Alzheimer's Prevention Fund of Florida. And I wouldn't say I'm a meeting planner, but I do plan our meetings.
That makes you a meeting planner. Funny how that works.
Well, tonight, we for everybody in Tallahassee, you know that the session ended recently. There is still a lot that's pending. Just today, I think the notice I saw said the 62 bills were sent to the governor today alone. So there's plenty more. They're still going to head his way. Until he takes action on them and signs them, they're not law. So there's a couple things that I'm going to kind of give you information on. Some of it, I think at least one of it is already law. The others are still pending him getting it and signing it. So there's always a chance that something may fail, but I don't think there is a lot that gets I don't know. Who knows about the vetoes? It's just you just don't know what's going to happen there. And everything that I'm going to talk about, it's with my own limited knowledge of what I've gleaned from reviewing some bills and reading articles and trying to keep up with things that may impact. I know that are going to impact me in my own work in planning meetings and going from there. So it may be of use, hopefully, to some of you all. And for anyone watching this later on, or any of you who are watching now, if you come across something that that we missed, because I guarantee you I've missed something, but we will please email us and let us know so we can try to share that. Welcome to Trail. And the very first thing that I'll start out with has not gone to the governor yet. It's in the General Appropriations Act, which for those of us in state government, it's something we live by. It sets our budget for the next year. But for a number of years, the act set out the maximum amount a state employee can be reimbursed for lodging. And this is before taxes, parking, resort fees, anything else gets added on. For a number of years, it was $150. For the last 2 years, it was $175. Starting July 1, and it's only July 1 through June 30, it will be $225. So it's a very nice increase. The caveat to that, and I've when talking to a couple of hotel suppliers who were like, "Hey," I was like, "I got no more money. I'm allowed to spend more on the room rate, but I did not get a corresponding increase in budget." So with that, if I end up having to schedule some events or meetings and go to $225, that may mean that I have to spend less on another meeting, or may have to go virtual where I might have gone in person. So if that happens a lot, and I'm not sure about some of your experiences, I think we all know that trying to meet in Southeast Florida and most certainly the Keys, 225 is still going to be pushing it a good chunk of the year. And I did talk with a rep from a property in the Keys, and she felt solid that she could do under 225 for a few months of the year, but certainly not weekends and anything like that. So that's a nice increase. But like I said, there's no other increase in budget. So what I've kind of told folks, the way I'm looking at planning is we're still going to be trying to stick to that 150-ish kind of as our ballpark. We've found a lot of comfort that in many areas, but you're very limited too. Now we tend to avoid the Tampa Bay area. Now, basically January through April, that's the only couple times that we've hit the 175 mark, and our room rates was trying to book there during that time period. And Tampa's gotten a lot more to be more of a heated market, particularly during that first quarter or so of the year. But everybody is different on how they will look at the room rates they're going for. I can only speak for what I'll do and those I work with. The 225 is very welcome because there have been times where we did not go and meet somewhere where we really needed to meet because we couldn't get a room rate. And that's primarily like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Key West. And those poor folks always have to schlep to Orlando or Jacksonville or wherever else is we're meeting that's more affordable per room rate. But now we're paying many more hours for their travel or for airfare, et cetera. But it is good news in that, but it is still, I don't think it's a windfall, certainly, for any property it's going to be, but it will allow some of us some flexibility that we didn't have before. Unfortunately, no change has been made for reimbursements for employees. So a state employee still only gets reimbursed $6 for breakfast, $11 for lunch, $19 for dinner. Doesn't matter if you're in Miami or Mariana, that's what you get. That, and then I think the last time that was changed, I looked it up, was I think 2005 or 2006. And that's what it got increased to back then. And I think it was around that same time, maybe a little later, they increased the mileage rate to when you're allowed to drive your personal vehicle, 44.5 cents per mile, which is still well under the current federal rate. So we'll see if any of those get increased. I mean, quite frankly, not for myself, but for a lot of the employees and staff that I, coordinate meetings for, that's where we have a big pain point. People don't want to travel because they will usually lose money trying to eat. Because you have to go to, and not to disparage McDonald's or a place like that, but like going there for $6 for breakfast is a challenge. You're probably not going to get what you want. You're not getting the combo you want. You might get a pick two or something like that and pay with no hash browns and certainly no orange juice or anything or coffee. So, that to me, that's where I would love to see that change more than anything else. But that's that. There are a couple bills to talk about that do not, on its face, you might go, well, that has nothing to do with planning, but some of it has to do with contracting and what you're going to have to find out from your contractors. And it goes beyond meeting planning for sure. But if you are, there's a new one bill, and I believe this one has become law. I'm not sure. It's Senate Bill 242, and it provides that if the state is going to contract with a nonprofit organization, or I'm sorry, if a public entity contracts with a nonprofit organization, then the contractor must provide documentation that indicates the amount of those funds that will be allocated during the use of the contract for the remuneration of any board member or officer of the organization. And that goes down to includes paid time off, bonuses, direct salaries, and like for board members, because board members of a nonprofit are not paid, it includes travel reimbursements and that sort of thing. So it goes into that detail, as then on every payment, they have to note how much of that payment is allocated to be used towards those things. that is going to be something difficult for many to do, because often, that's a payment that goes into maybe a general fund or something else. But I think that's going to cause some of our folks who we might partner with a nonprofit to go to plan something, or they might be one of our vendors. There are various services they might provide. And I think that's going to be tricky. I know it's going to be tricky just in general, but particularly some of the vendors you might deal with for, you might work with a nonprofit organization to do some maybe accessibility type things at your event. Well, they're not going to be used to providing this information. So I think that's going to be something tricky. Now, again, that only, refers to things that are using, that are by a public agency. Let me see, did they define that here? Yeah, but I mean, essentially it's going to be state agencies, but it might have, because it refers to public agency, there might be a further definition somewhere that I'm not seeing that may include that. But it's going to be something I know that's going to be tricky for a lot of folks using. And like I said, it's one of those, this isn't going to be directly applied to a lot of your meeting planning, but there are going to be occasions where you're going to work with a nonprofit entity and you'll have to find out that information. All right. Any questions so far? I don't want to just keep blabbering on. Okay. How many are any of you familiar with the E-Verify program from the Department of Homeland Security?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the legislature implemented a requirement that public employers and some private employers utilize E-Verify back effective January 2021. It was, not, there were some issues with the way it was written, because it would, and it's still now, it's been this bill, Senate Bill 1718, rewrites E-Verify, still requires all state entities to verify before they contract with any business whatsoever, profit, nonprofit, doesn't matter, that they utilize E-Verify. And that has been tricky with hotels. Often contacting the hotel to work on the hotel contract, and the salesperson's like, we can't sign this, we don't. And I've had to help many of them go through, like, okay, your hotel is owned by this company and this company, and had to go all the way to like corporate HR in some other city or state for them to figure out where that's done, because they likely, many of them, did federal business, and that's been something the Fed's been doing for a while. But this rewrite now requires, it has enforcement provisions in it, so that if an employer does not do that, there are enforcement provisions the Department of Economic Opportunity can take. The overall bill also provides that cities and counties cannot provide any type of funding that would be utilized to provide identification cards for non-U.S. citizens, non-authorized aliens to be here. Again, that could impact, some of your attendees. I don't know that it would. It's not any that I would have, but that I could see, because there's also that the state law enforcement officers cannot accept a driver's license or ID that is issued out of state, that is of the class or type that are issued exclusively to undocumented immigrants. Apparently, I did not know those types existed. So apparently, if you have a driver's license from another state and there's a marking on it that indicates that that is a class for an undocumented immigrant, then that is not going to be accepted in Florida, and you could be cited for driving without a license. It also goes on to create a requirement that hospitals that accept Medicaid must now include or collect information regarding immigration status during the check-in process, and that employers anyone who employs 25 or more employees are required to utilize E-Verify, and there are enforcement provisions on that. That can include your inability to contract with any government entity for a period of 1 year or 2 years. It depends on the phase there. So, the meetings and stuff that I have planned, I've not had a lot where my experience with this was on the Verify side, where I had to make sure that anybody that I'm contracting with used it. But some of these others might have some impact depending on who your attendees are at your meetings or events. So
I have a quick question. So is
Yeah.
that for independent contractors as well? So if you
go ahead.
contract your services out for someone else to do your planning and set up your hotel and all of that, does that mean that that independent contractor needs to be e-verified as well?
Well, and that's where we ran into this when this legislation first came out a couple of years ago, and then even in the current legislation, we haven't finished our analysis, but basically, I work for a government entity. I can't sign a contract with you to plan my meetings unless you have registered and use E-Verify. Well, you can't. A individual that has less than 5 employees by the federal government, you would have to lie to the federal government to register and use it. So we provide a waiver. We have an affidavit that I would have you sign that indicates that you're a sole proprietor, you certify you have no employees, and if that changes, you'll notify us within 10 days and that sort of thing. So that's a workaround I've done. But then there's a requirement in my contract with you that if you subcontract, so then you go contract with a hotel on my behalf, you now have to make sure they are using E-Verify. It passes down to subcontractors. And so this AV company, anything where you're signing a contract, you're going to have to, even the subcontractors, it flows down to them. Now, the requirement got eased a little bit. The current statute requires the subcontractors to certify via an affidavit every year that they are either using it or not qualified to use it or allowed to use it. The new version, which will take place effect July 1, no longer requires the annual affidavit, just a one-time. But like I said, there are enforcement provisions for the Department of Economic Opportunity, plus if I'm the one contracting, we have to review our contracts. And if we believe that your status has changed or that you're not using it, that's an automatic right to or actual obligation to terminate the contract. And it's of no penalty, no fee, nothing. It's because you would have, violated the terms of the contract. So there's some trickle down stuff in there that, and it gets confusing. And, particularly when you're dealing with foreign corporations. And that's kind of goes on to where I want to talk about next, to where at first I didn't think this had anything to do and I wasn't going to talk about it. But then when I was talking with a colleague today about Senate Bill 264, we got to thinking well, I guess I'm going to have to find this information out. Senate Bill 264 will not allow a public entity, and let me make sure they go very broad with that. Where's that definition? I'm sorry, governmental entity means any state, county, district, authority, or municipal officer, department, division, board, bureau, commission, or other separate unit of government created or established by law, including but not limited to the Commission on Ethics, the Public Service Commission, the Office of Public Counsel, and any other public or private agency, person, partnership, corporation, or business entity acting on behalf of any public agency. Long definition, covers a whole lot, and that there would be a lot to unpack there dealing with. So if I'm contracting with you on behalf of something, you may be obligated to follow this too, even though you're a person. But if you're acting on behalf of the government entity, you'd have to follow it. But what this does is it sets out a list of foreign countries of concern. And those foreign countries of concern are specifically the People's Republic of China, the Russian Federation, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the Republic of Cuba, the Venezuelan regime of Nicolas Maduro, or the Syrian Arabic Republic, including any agency of or any other entity of significant control of such foreign country of concern. All right, you're like, what does this have to do with anything? Well, it prevents a governmental entity, and remember that's a very big broad term, from contracting with an entity that where one of those countries of concern may have a controlling interest, which means 25% or more in that company or organization, where you might get personal identifying information. Well, think about the hotel. If a hotel, and remember that example earlier where the hotel is having to go to a corporate office somewhere and that corporation may own dozens of hotels or whatever, there could be foreign countries or foreign companies that would qualify under this who may have that 25% stake, because many of us are familiar. Sometimes that company that we're dealing with is even a sub company of another company that's part of a larger group. And so this is one where we were talking today that, well, we're going to have something for them to at least be on notice that they have to, inform us, or an affidavit or something, because it's very possible when you're dealing with some of these mega corporations who own dozens or hundreds of hotels, it's possible that there is a ownership stake that might be of concern there. And there are, date requirements for all this starting in January 2024 and beyond. This will likely be minimal in the industry, but I just don't know. I know that originally there were a lot of provisions in this for them buying land directly in Florida, but these foreign nations or entities of concern, do buy investments everywhere, and real estate is has always been a very good, solid investment, and something many are interested in. And so it is very possible that some of these hotel groups, corporations, et cetera, may have some form of ownership stake. And like I said, this wasn't anything I was thinking I'd mention, but after talking about it, and the wonderful people we deal with as our suppliers, they won't know. They don't know that they might know they're owned by this whatever company and that they have 5 or 6 hotels, but that company may be owned by a whole other company that does have those foreign interests. So that's where I don't know what we're going to do with it, at least on from my side, but we're going to be looking at what sort of language do we put in there that we can at least try to show that we are doing something. All right, any questions up to now? All right, a couple of other things that I don't have quite as much information on. The governor has signed, there's a couple of bills that have been signed that deal with human trafficking. And that's something I'm in favor of, like, there's a lot that really still needs to be done in there. But they one bill puts in, it tries to hold hotels more accountable for roles that happen in facilitating human trafficking, because it can now it gives, and I don't remember if it's DBPR or who, but they can now be fined for violations. In the past, it appears that they could not be fined. It shortens the time they have to correct staff training and awareness down to 45 days, and sets a fine at $2,000 a day for violations of where they should have known. And I believe that's is that Senate Bill 692, or I think that got put into a different one, but that's there are a number of things that they did in those bills trying to put the hotels and others their feet to the fire, because unfortunately it's sad to say that probably some of us have stayed at a property, and at that same property somebody might have been trafficked or in some form or fashion. And that's unfortunate that particularly big conventions are known that, they have traveling groups that bring, they traffic individuals there to purposely take advantage of those events. And it's awful. So anything that can be done, I think should be. But they have a number of other things in here related to safe houses and dealing with foster homes, because those unfortunately, should have been safe spaces, but there have been too many stories where they're not. So they have added different additional restrictions on those. And then there were a couple of other bills that touched on it in some form or fashion. So definitely, that's something to look out. That'll definitely impact our hotel partners. That's something I'm hoping that, later, maybe this year or next year, that can, perhaps be a topic that we get covered in a meeting, bring someone in from an entity that would be qualified to talk about, how to identify it, how to, catch it, from the planner's perspective, as well as maybe another one on the suppliers. Because as a planner, I'm not trained on how to recognize that. Yes, ma'am.
That's an excellent idea. And I know someone who would be perfect from Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center here in Tallahassee that deals with human trafficking. So that's a really good idea for a topic.
Yeah, and particularly,
go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, particularly from the planner's perspective, because, they've got training requirements out there for hotels now, but there's no requirement out there for us. And, I think many of us feel fairly confident that the events that we plan, that's not really something that would happen, or it may be a minuscule chance, but it's still something that we're going to be at a hotel with other groups. And so us knowing what to look out for, I mean, I think most of us just have enough sense that if we see someone being abused, or you've got people that are being too unruly, or whatnot, but there are other signs that we just don't know to look for.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. And there were 4 bills signed today by the governor to deal with human trafficking, and I posted a link that has all the details on floridagov.com.
And that's where I get a notice every day, and that's where I picked up some of this.
Yeah, and it's
that was out there.
By the way, DCF is the state agency.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you. That's really, really helpful.
All right. Those were the main things that I wanted to cover, that I know that I have seen to date, that I know are going to impact us in some form or fashion. Like I said, some of it's weird, that it's like, how does that impact planning? But, that might, at least if you're a government planner planning for a government agency, that certainly might, as well as some of those that put the burden down on you as a separate company that we might hire to plan for us. That might put some burdens there on you. But has anybody heard of anything else? Okay.
No, not for me.
Latrell joined us a little bit late and didn't get a chance to introduce herself. And I don't think Sandra's had the pleasure of meeting her yet. So it'd be nice to hear from Latrell if she's there.
I am here. I am currently driving and getting ready to head up to Charleston. So, but hi, hello. I'm not sure who was it that's on that I hadn't had a chance. Oh, Miss Sandra Gilly. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
My name is Latrell Hardwick. I'm a FAMU graduate. I don't know if you are.
I am.
Awesome. That's great. I felt the family in the building already.
We got a lot of family here.
Yes. So I don't know if you guys have already talked about, the upcoming positions, but I will be the secretary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so excited about what's to come.
Tell us what you do.
Say that again.
Tell us what you do.
So currently I have a lot of hats that I wear these days. And that's one of the reasons why I've been so busy. I'm starting a business with my brother. So I've since left corporate America, and I will be a vendor working for the DMV with this business that we're starting. So there'll be more to discuss later as soon as we get things all up and running. But yeah, so we'll be working as a vendor for the DMV.
Wow, that's a shift.
Yeah, I know, right?
Okay.
It's something that sort of fell in our hands, and we have the support from the DMV, with the experience that my brother has dealing with cars and my experience, business wise. So, it should be a great partnership. Mhm.
Nice.
Excellent.
Thank you. And that's all for now.
Mhm. And Sandra, did you want to introduce yourself? I actually started the live stream a little bit late, and so it wouldn't be hard. It wouldn't be a bad thing to just quickly say who we are again.
Okay, I'm Zandra Gilly with the Ounce Prevention Fund of Florida. I apologize because my granddog wants my attention,
Aw.
and
Oh,
so I apologize.
we
But-
welcome animals on here, Sandra.
That's
You can
cute.
hold- especially cute ones. Okay, we do
Okay.
welcome them on Zooms.
One other bill, and I don't have the number in front of me, that really won't impact planners, or really suppliers. But a bill was signed related to public records that shields, travel information of certain officials and, their, some of the representatives and the security officers and all that go with them to provide service. But that did get signed, earlier this week. What it does is, right now, and if you don't know it, there is a public website that you can go to and search for the travel of any and every state employee, and find their information, unless they're shielded from, because of their position. And by that, normally it's like a certain law enforcement and others, to where they're shielded from certain public records because you don't want the bad guys to go find them. No, they will harass them. So there are further protections that were just provided to shield their information. In this case, I mean, really, when you go out there and you look, you search for mine, go for it, feel free. I'm way behind on my travel reimbursements. So like, you're gonna be like, oh, he doesn't travel. I need to do like 6 or 7 vouchers, but anyway. But you can see the city, how much was spent, I think maybe even the hotel, so there's some limited data, but for every single state employee that travels. So that's out there, and this allows some of it to be shielded for certain folks, the speaker, the president, the governor, chief justice, few others. That way, it's harder to kind of like stalk and find out where they are. I mean, because quite frankly, I know many of us have had to deal with that we don't advertise some things too very publicly, because you don't necessarily want to, the whole world to know, oh, that's where that group's going to be. I'm going to go harass them, because doesn't matter. Anybody can be subjected to that, for any reason. Like, oh, we don't like cyclists. We're going to go, with our big trucks, and I don't know. I'm making that up, but but yeah, that's another thing. It really, like I said, it won't impact anybody other than if you are used to searching those records and seeing all that out there. Those are all the ones that I have so far. As more things get signed, kind of, I follow the stuff I followed during session. There was a bill out there that at one point was going to basically subsume Visit Florida within what is becoming, I believe, the Department of Commerce, Department of Economic Opportunity. That changed. It's Enterprise Florida, and something else is going to become part of the Department of Commerce, but not Visit Florida. I believe they did give them a little less money than was originally recommended for that, but I know that's something that would have majorly impacted tourism in the state. And there was also going to be changes to how local, I believe it was going to require the local destination agencies like, Visit Tallahassee, et cetera, to fund them more. And so that was going to cause impacts, but all that appears that did not happen this session. I know Visit Florida has been up on under scrutiny a number of times. It's one of those things that, might be, it's like, oh, look, here's this money we could take and make useful somewhere else. But that did not happen this session. So, but if like I said, any of you who learn of something, shoot us an email, as I will take a look and see if anything else comes out, and maybe in a future email, note anything of importance or note, or mention it at the next meeting. So
DEI, how does him signing Well, institutions are impacted by teaching DEI. I know that they mentioned on the radio earlier today, both Florida A&M University and FSU, how much money that they had been spending on those areas in DEI, 4 million at FAMU and 2 million at FSU. And then that will go away. Does it affect any other entities that may even work with those institutions?
Right. I have not studied all of that particular legislation. You know, what I have heard talking to some people in other you know, adjacent entities and industries, you know, there's some, you know, almost every day I get emails either from National SGMP or another chapter or meetings, industry groups, others that are all DEI, 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 and it was like, okay, you know, but that's not something that I think that's there may be a chilling effect in Florida, you know, as far as including a lot of that on agendas, even if you're not directly impacted. You know, it's not something, you know, it's not had any impact on the stuff that I do for work because it's typically a business meeting or, you know, specific training. But I think that's going to have an influence on the events that some of our colleagues plan. And it certainly, I don't know, I have, you know, one friend who works elsewhere was saying, I don't know if I'm going to ask to go to this conference because this conference is talking about all of that sort of thing, and I don't know if it'll get approved. You know, so rather than even ask, they, you know, probably weren't going to do it. You know, so those types of things may have an impact, whether you're directly impacted or not. You know, the higher education bill that you're talking about. So I think there will be some impacts on that in the industry, just as many parts of the industry outside of Florida are ramping up that, but I don't think that's going to be the case for some of our colleagues.
That's a
Thank
good
you.
question because I've taught DEI, as many of you know, for years and years, and several of my clients in institutions of higher learning, so they have offices of DEI, and they just have ceased all operations. They're not really sure how to deal with this. The bill was signed, I think, on Monday by the governor, making it official. We knew it was coming, but to ban all public universities and colleges for spending money on DEI initiatives is heartbreaking, in my opinion, but it's sad.
Yeah. It does not obviously directly, you know, prevent, you know, many organizations, particularly businesses, from pursuing those avenues and to take that training or offer that training for their folks. But you know, I think even private businesses, there are going to be those who may take a second thought. So I think, you know, we'll see that change coming in many of our meetings, events, and then it'll impact some, you know, like, I guess, third-party providers who provide ancillary services at meetings where they're doing various types of entertainment or social activities or, you know, things along those lines. Those may be impacted where, you know, you might, some might have gone something, you know, in one direction as more as a social activity that, or networking that they may now go a different route. So I think that might be some impact there.
So do you think, I have a question. So do you think that impact could trickle down to nonprofits as we do our training for meetings? So I know, you know, we get really fancy with use of words. EI is now the new, you know, DEI. So you have some people, so when it comes to that and paying for it, possibly out of state funds, do you think that that would be scrutinized more when you have an independent contractor who's coming in to conduct a training? Are they held to that same standard as, higher institutions or state agencies?
I haven't seen a bill that addresses that.
Okay.
But, just, I think you will have and I'm guessing here, a state agency might look at what training they're offering their employees, and they might modify their training models depending on what they were currently offering based on just the general landscape. It doesn't take anything for any of us to look around and go, oh, that's what's happening. Okay. Let me use my headlights and look down the road and make sure that the lane is clear. So could it trickle down? Perhaps. Like I have not heard of anything where like that they're going to start monitoring in contracts like that to make sure that if a state entity is contracting with a nonprofit organization, obviously, and well, generally speaking, the state agency is not paying for training and that sort of thing. But I don't think that I haven't seen a bill or anything that would require them to like dig into, oh, well, we're paying for this, but you're training your staff over here on this. We don't like that. You can't do that. I haven't seen anything like that. I don't know of any type of requirement or way that would happen. But, there have been some bills passed that I was not have normally expected. So, I just have to see where things go. And like I said, I've only reviewed a handful of bills compared to all that are out there. And so there may be something in something out there with that, or it could be just the way that some decide to interpret the landscape and readjust their heading based on their view of where what they should be doing, whether they're directed to do it or not. So there's always the chance. I mean, I think, and particularly in Tallahassee, whatever the state government is doing impacts everything else. So if, they're doing layoffs, that's going to cause lots of problem. If they're doing a big focus on something, then that's going to have a trickle down effect. But that's my non-answer because I don't know. Just kind of predicting what might be possible. I don't know if anybody else has a thought.
I think, I think your concerns are valid, Sandra. And I think that in the nonprofit world, you look at who is providing your funding probably, and thinking if funding is coming from the state, is this ultimately going to be the decision that funding is going to be cut if you teach these things? It certainly doesn't look like this legislative session. It happened for nonprofits, but unless the governor changes by next year, it might be a concern for next year, if you know what I mean. So the governor is probably going to change for next year if somebody runs for president. And the shift will happen, I'm sure. Anytime there's new leadership, the shift changes, right?
You know that the legislation change as well, that the governor, if he runs for the office of president, that he will be given an opportunity to come back to remain as governor.
Yeah, but his focus will be away from Florida for a while he's running.
for a window of time.
So strange world we're living in.
Indeed.
Well, has anybody seen or heard anything else that might impact the meetings or events industry? All right. Well, I will. I think we can all, continue, if we see or hear anything, share it and see, what may stick, because there could be something out there that, like I said, that the couple of things I talked about when I first read it, I had no thought on it impacting meetings or events, and then it's like, oh, well, wait, that actually could. Some of it maybe it's a little far fetched, but I think anything is possible.
Thank you. That was really helpful. Good
Thank
discussion.
you.
Good
Very
questions.
much so. Yes.
All right, well,
Love it.
and next month, we'll be getting information out for that, but hopefully we'll be in person because we'll be swearing in our officers.
Yay. And
Yay.
Latrell, if you need to be at a distance, we'll make sure it's hybrid. So
Okay, are we talking about next month?
next month.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna try to be in person. I'm gonna try to be there.
Awesome. Awesome. I know you made the commute from Jacksonville previously, so yeah, we'd love to see you.
Yes,
And that would be June 20th.
okay.
June 20th. Awesome.
Yeah. Good deal. All righty.
All
I'm
right.
out.
Thank you.
All right,
All right.
well, thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay,
Have a good
bye-bye.
one.
Care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.